So we're here today with Gino Yu, the tenured professor here at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University.
Yes.
Just tell me a little bit about your background and what kind of brought you here and what you're doing here. And
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, computer science, PhD as well too. I used to teach at USC. I met my wife, who's from Hong Kong, which is what brought me to Hong Kong. And for the last 30 years, I've been in the area of digital entertainment, so video games, animation, media. And as a grad student, I ended up going around the world. In 1989, I had 3 papers accepted to different conferences, ended up traveling around the world. And wherever I went, I just meet different cultures, and you look people in the eyes, and you could kind of connect with them. Although your backgrounds and cultures are completely different, something about it allows you to connect with other people. And that led me to wondering, what is it? Well, actually that, and I only had $1,000 cash at the time and no credit card, and traveled for 4 months and had an amazing time. And through that, made me wonder, what is it? What's the commonality of mankind? What is it across all these different cultures that allows us to connect? And everyone's born, everyone dies, and while they're alive, they have to deal with themselves. And so they build a mental worldview, and then they live out their world, their views in terms of society, their families, culture, society, all lay kind of a belief system on them that they act from. And part of the process of kind of development is in engaging with people is, what if you let go of all the beliefs? What if you let go of all the beliefs? And as you do that, interesting things happen. It allows you to travel around the world and have amazing magical moments. And you can actually live the amazing magical moments just by traveling. And so that's part of the impetus for these the evolutionary caravan of being able to travel into the unknown and to kind of live from the unknown. And from that, from that experience, I've been in digital entertainment for about 30 years. But the last 10 years have been in the area of consciousness, so understanding the mind-body relationship. And so with the engineering background, I look at the mind-body relationship kind of like hardware and software in a computer. Physically, I'm here, physically, you're here, and physically, you're somewhere right now. But in this conversation, we seem to be somewhere as well. So what's the relationship between this mental space, which is where our beliefs and our worldviews are, and the physical body? And so if I mention, say, Hawaii, and you know what I mean, or there's certain neurons in my brain that are wired like yours, so what is that relationship? And so where that relates to digital entertainment and media is arguably where we're at in this conversation, is where you're at when you read a book, watch a movie, or play a video game. And so how do things here influence how you think and how you feel? And there's a process of learning, which is kind of the development, schools, universities, etc. But then there's also a process of unlearning, getting back into resting and not knowing, which largely relates to kind of the wisdom traditions in religion, etc. What's your relationship with all of this? Ultimately, who are you? Why are you here? And what is your relationship with all of this?
so you're going to be kind of covering the basis of this and some of the science and the technology around this in your workshop.
Yeah, well, and so related to that, we've spent the last 10 years or so, actually since the experience of traveling around the world, almost 30 years ago, I suppose. 30 years ago.
Time flies.
is developing kind of a theory of understanding what development is, related to, how we develop, and then what happens at the advanced stages of development, especially related to, and so a talk that I give in one of the workshops that I'll be talking about is on, it's called Personal Development, Mental Health, and Human Potential. So personal development is the development process that we all go through. Mental health is when there's a mind and body and the emergence of this, space and time, when those are out of alignment, especially the relationship between the symbols and the mind and the processes of physiology, those can be mental health issues.
Yeah, and physical health issues. It creates dis-ease.
Well,
we're talking about the nocebo effect and the placebo effect.
Yeah.
All of these are contributing factors to how your thoughts affect your body.
Exactly. And so understanding that from a scientific perspective, Western scientific perspective is interesting because it, and the neat thing about the way that we look at this too, is it is kind of the mind and body in that relationship, but now, there's a siren in the background right now, but it spans the metaphysical. So how and why do things play out as they do? Like the door that just slammed there, for example, and we've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that the high stages, when you have high energy coupled to symbols, that's where this mental health problem happens. And so bipolar disorder is just the inability to regulate energy in the physiology. And the energy that you generate actually relates to how you're breathing and how you're holding your physiology. And so a large part of what we're trying to do with this caravan too is that a lot of people around the world are going through experiences in these kind of high energy situations. And when you have a lot of energy in the physiology, Chinese call it qi, the Indian, it's called prana, etc. And when you're generating a lot of energy, surreal shit can happen, and can be kind of disorienting for a lot of people, and crashes happen in terms of depression, etc. And all of that, a large part of it is a mind and body out of balance. And part of what right now, unfortunately, the modern society will give you psychotherapy, will give you drugs and medication, etc. But I think there's another way. And there are a lot of practices that can be developed. Thomas, you, myself, have developed a lot of practices to help facilitate people, especially people that may be going through like a Kundalini experience or, have done psychoactives and haven't been the same since, or have had some kind of trauma, like a bad breakup, or death in the family, etc., and are just trying to understand who they are and why they're here in their relationship in the world today. And we have, now the exciting thing in terms of the work that we're doing is we're really looking at Western approaches of science, but then also looking at Eastern practices as well too, in terms of breath, meditation, different forms of meditation, and understanding this behavior from the perspective of developmental psychology, the autonomic nervous system, and the endocrine system, and giving people a framework for really investigating what's actually going on with them to help kind of debug, their psychology. And so the exciting thing is for our trip right now, we're planning on going to, we're doing Europe in January. We're in discussions right now to do kind of the United States and kind of May-June timeframe, and then also in Asia in October, where we'll have that Consciousness, Science, Technology, and Society conference again in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And so part of this, what we're looking for are people that are trying to make sense or building community that, hey, no one really understands me in the modern world, but, I think we're people that develop understandings and can understand and appreciate no matter how crazy the beliefs may be.
And I think we're at a point where it's transitioning more and more that way. There's more people doing spiritual practices, like yoga is one in itself, which can bring around Kundalini experiences. People are now tapping into our psychoactives and meditation, which start unlocking things, which once they unlock, it's like, holy...
Anxiety over kind of global warming, and there's a lot that's there. And so we're looking for people that are going through these experiences. We're looking for other teachers, people that have developed unique practices based upon their unique gifts. And so here's something where we're actually identifying people with special abilities, which is the third part of this. So it's personal development, mental health, and then human potential. And so a lot of people that have developed like empaths, intuitives, seers, People that, we have one person that can physically move you, just with his mind, with his energy. Other people that can fill the room with light. A lot of really interesting people that we've come across. And so we're identifying other people like this. And we're also trying to build a network of academic researchers and scientists that are researching this as well too. And so it's really threefold, what this trip is about. That, and also really looking at influencing influential people as well too. So this trip will actually be at Davos at the World Economic Forum. Looks like we're going to be collaborating with Hub Culture too. So we'll actually have a space there to be doing things, which is pretty exciting. With all the movers and shakers, if you will. And so it should be a lot of fun.
Because when we're delving into this kind of area of consciousness, it can be a very ethereal subject for people. What is consciousness? What does it mean? How does it affect us? And statistics like, they say round about 95% of the day we spend unconscious. In other words, we're acting from experience and story and just programming. This is where, when we start to unlock those things, we start to understand ourselves and our lives in so much more detail and how to influence it.
Well, the dangerous thing there is the way that you used consciousness there, and unconsciousness or is problematic in terms of defining what is consciousness even.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so arguably consciousness is just the thing that's aware of all of this, that which enables the awareness of all of this. And this is where, again, coming at it from a more open perspective, the Western perspective is consciousness is something that's somehow some process that happens in the brain or at the quantum level that goes through the brain, etc. But the Asian perspective is that consciousness is primary and everything is built upon that.
Yeah.
And so technically, from an Asian perspective, and from a non-dual perspective, who you are isn't this. You're the thing that's aware of this. And so there are a lot of different framings of all of this. And the framing that, and part of the challenge for communicating experience is the lack of a common language for describing these kind of things, which is why having workshops and developing an experiential understanding is really important, which is again why we're on tour.
Yeah.
With this.
Yeah, you've got to get it out to the people and let them experience it for themselves.
Yeah.
And it does seem that actual Western science is catching up with the Eastern philosophy, things like Stephen Schwartz's work, where we're looking at non-local consciousness and how experimentation and science is now showing that actually some of this philosophy is true in some ways.
Well, there's a lot of fringe stuff there, but the main road of science is still kind of far off. Well, at the quantum level they understand it, but then how do you bring it to
the physical level?
Yeah, and so challenges.
Yes. So this kind of also comes into the next step of the evolution of this whole project with the Mind Expansion Academy and creating a platform to provide various styles of training, various video training programs, and giving people more access to this kind of thing, because not everybody's going to be able to come along to some of these events, and they're going to need access to this kind of training and information long term.
Well, that's again one of the challenges. So those are opportunities, but again, there's a difference between knowing something conceptually and knowing it experientially.
So do you think that some of the content that we can produce through video programs can actually be experiential as well, to actually give people, at home, an experiential exercise that they can do and actually find this sat in their own home?
Potentially, and then that's where things like video games and virtual reality are really exciting. And we're doing a lot of work in the trans-tech space as well too. With sound like tactile therapy, with biofeedback, quantified self, there's a lot that can be done. And ultimately, it's about cultivating greater somatic awareness. The challenge in all of this, and the problem with video and all of this, the challenge isn't in learning. The challenge is in unlearning, and how do you get people back to a knowing, to intuition and insight, and knowing without knowing how you know. And so hard to, again, very, very difficult. I was just kind of, one of the people that may be joining us, Diction, actually has been talking to me, and he's looking for guidance, and it's like, well, you're looking for guidance out here, but ultimately it's, community is important, but then ultimately it's about
your own experience.
well, not only that, but finding your own inner compass. What is your relationship with all of this? And each person is unique.
Yes, most definitely. We all have a different viewpoint, a different perspective, a different experience to come from.
Yeah. But then the beautiful thing is, what if you let go of all viewpoints?